Welcome to this new automotive news video for Friday, June 26, 2026. Today we'll discuss how Volkswagen and Porsche must overhaul their automotive strategy to confront the group's worst crisis in decades, about another brand joining the already very long list of manufacturers abandoning station wagons, and about BMW, which is announcing a surprising commercial success for its sporty wagons, with, as you'll see, an amusing detail about them. I hope today's topics interest you, and if they do, I'm counting on you to show your interest. By supporting my channel for free, you can like this video, subscribe for future ones, boost the video if available, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts on today's news. At Volkswagen and Porsche, the party is really over. The group is about to announce a restructuring plan of historic proportions, even bigger than what was originally planned. Since Volkswagen had already announced 50,000 job cuts, it will ultimately be 100,000 worldwide over the next 5 years. This plan also includes stopping automobile production at 4 German sites, Hanover, Zwickau, Emden, as well as at the Audi plant in Neckarsulm. Production will not be stopped immediately, but will end when the models currently manufactured at these sites reach the end of their cycle. The symbolism is huge because Volkswagen had signed an agreement with the unions in 2024 that was supposed to guarantee no plant closures, at least until 2035. The plan would go even further since the Volkswagen brand itself, as well as the component factories, could be separated from the current structure and placed into separate entities. Basically, Volkswagen, the brand, will no longer be part of the Volkswagen Group. The goal is to make the Volkswagen Group lighter, smaller, easier to manage, and above all, more dynamic, which will allow it to respond more quickly to different market trends. It's simply the biggest transformation we've ever seen in the history of the Volkswagen Group and the Volkswagen brand. The group also wants to reduce its overhead costs by 11 billion euros by the end of the decade, another very important figure, and that really sounds very bad. They are about to reduce their investments by around 15% to return to roughly 130 billion euros over the next 5 years. It seems colossal, but when an automotive group starts to decrease its investments in vehicle development, we know what happens behind the scenes. Less money to invest means fewer technologies developed. It also means fewer models developed. And ultimately, it means fewer sales. Volkswagen has also just finalized a strategic sale. It's divesting its non-core activities. It has sold Everlands. That was its subsidiary. It specializes in the development of industrial diesel engines. Be careful here, we're not talking about the engines that are installed in Volkswagen Group cars, which means that Volkswagen will still be able to continue developing diesel engines for its future cars. Here, we're talking about its truck engine division. Volkswagen was thus able to recover 7 billion euros in one go. Meanwhile, Porsche, which is one of the Volkswagen brands most affected by the automotive crisis, is also going through a deep period of self-reflection. After a very difficult year in 2025, Porsche presented the main points of its 2035 strategy. Let me remind you of a few figures first. The turnover fell to 36 billion euros, which is a drop of almost 10%. The operating profit collapsed by 410 million euros, which is a decrease, brace yourself, of 92%. And the Porsche brand's margin fell to 1 compared to, remember, 1.4 in 2024. In other words, Porsche in 2025 was a less profitable brand than Peugeot, for example. Porsche recently changed its CEO. You should know that until now, the CEO of Porsche was Oliver Blume, who was also the CEO of the Volkswagen Group. But that has changed, because Porsche's investors believed it wasn't possible to have a CEO who would have enough time to properly manage both of these entities. The new CEO is Michael Lethers, the former CEO of McLaren. And he wants to completely change the plans. He wants to go back to exclusivity, sell fewer cars, but sell more expensive cars to improve that famous profit margin as much as possible. The brand especially wants to focus more on higher margin SUVs, with the replacement for the Macan planned for 2028 and another large 3-row SUV, which, as a reminder, is set to be positioned above the Cayenne in the lineup. At the same time, the lineup will be simplified. Porsche considers that its portfolio has simply become too complex, even compared to its competitors. For example, it is planned that 2 versions of the electric Porsche Taycan will be discontinued, probably though not officially confirmed, the Sport Turismo and Cross Turismo versions. Porsche is also cutting its workforce. We briefly talked about it in another video, but they were already planning to cut 2,000 jobs in 2025 and are now adding another 2,000 job cuts. For the simple reason that if Porsche sells more expensive cars but fewer cars, it needs fewer production lines and fewer workers to build those cars. So, if we look at Porsche, it's fewer models, more SUVs, a step back from fully electric to focus more on hybrids and combustion engines. By the way, he confirmed that Porsche will never develop a fully electric version of the 911, which is really the heart of the Porsche lineup and truly the most iconic model. So it will always have a combustion engine, with hybridization of course, but never be fully electric. Thanks to this new strategy, Porsche hopes to reach 35 billion euros in revenue by 2026 and quickly recover its margin to reach around 6 by the end of the year. 6% seems huge compared to the 1% it made in 2025. That's 6 times more, we agree, but let's remember that in 2022, before this major automotive crisis, Porsche was planning to reach a 20% margin. And above all, in 3 years, the value of the Porsche brand has simply been divided by 3. It's easy to remember, 3 years divided by 3. In any case, whether at Volkswagen or at Porsche, the observation is the same. The years when manufacturers could multiply models, invest in all segments, and prioritize volume now seem completely behind them. Today, the main focus for all European manufacturers is to cut costs, streamline product lines, drop less profitable models, and invest in what generates real revenue. This approach applies not only to European manufacturers, but also to others like Hyundai. Indeed, Hyundai is joining the growing list of manufacturers that are simply abandoning station wagons. That's what the brand announced a few hours ago. They announced that the i30 station wagon, which is currently in their lineup, would simply be the last model of this type in their history. It was launched in 2017, and it was restyled in 2020. And in 2024, it will still have a few more years left. But after that, it's the end of station wagons at Hyundai. The reason is very simple, and it's the same for pretty much all manufacturers who have abandoned this type of vehicle. The main reason is that customers are no longer rushing to buy station wagons. They now prefer to buy SUVs, which brings us to the second reason for Hyundai discontinuing station wagons. Hyundai prefers to focus on SUVs because overall they're more fashionable. Plus, they're easier to sell at higher prices, boosting profits. As a result, station wagons are a disappearing type of vehicle. As far as I know, unless I'm mistaken, among French brands, there are only 2 station wagons currently being offered. The 308 station wagon and Dacia Jogger should continue for the next generation. With the i30 and Type O station wagons discontinued, affordable station wagons are basically gone. The only manufacturers who will really keep offering them for sale are the German manufacturers. And we're not talking about the same prices at all. It's a shame. Everyone is betting on SUVs, even though everyone agrees that in a few years, the SUV trend will be on the decline. It's also a shame for very practical reasons because wagons are generally much more spacious and comfortable than SUVs. SUVs may be very big and tall, but often there's less space inside than in a large wagon. Wagons are generally longer, which also allows you to fit longer items. SUVs are generally taller, bigger, and heavier, which means they inevitably use more energy, and that's not good news in the era of all-electric vehicles, where manufacturers are fighting to gain a few extra kilometers of range. Still, as I mentioned, German brands continue to focus on wagons. And at BMW, apparently wagons sell very well, especially their sporty versions. For its current generation of cars, BMW decided to bet again on the touring versions for its M3 and M5. They just announced that sales of these versions have exceeded their expectations. They didn't give any specific numbers, but apparently they're selling very well. And what's quite interesting is that apparently they're selling very well in all markets. Whether it's in the United States, Europe, or Asia, these are models that continue to sell. Not too bad, and elsewhere in the world, these models are selling like hotcakes. On paper, it would actually be the BMW M5 Touring, which is more upscale and more expensive, that sells even better than the M3, mainly for tax reasons, especially in Europe, and even more so in France, since the M5, despite being equipped with a big twin-turbo V8, is much more affordable in terms of taxes than the BMW M3 Touring, which only has a simple 3-liter 6-cylinder engine. In fact, the M3 is 40,000 euros cheaper than the M5 to begin with, but because of French taxes, the M3 actually ends up being much more expensive for the simple reason that this car is an internal combustion-only car. Whereas with the M5, despite its big V8 engine, BMW has gone with a plug-in hybrid. Because it has a big battery, despite weighing 2.5 tons, it avoids a CO2 penalty. However, it still faces an 18,000 euro weight penalty due to its 2.5-ton weight. But once you add up all the penalties and all the taxes for these two cars, in the end, the M3 sells for 205,000 euros, while the M5 sells for 184,000, including registration. In other words, in France, and maybe this is a flaw in the current tax system, the biggest BMW wagon actually ends up costing nearly 21,000 euros less than the smallest one. It's a situation that's directly reflected in sales, since depending on the month, BMW sold between 6 and 15 times more BMW M5S with V8 engines than BMW M3S with 6-cylinder engines. It's an oddity that can be seen in other countries as well. In the Netherlands, the M3 Touring faces a 63,000 euro penalty, but the M5 has none, making it sell very well. This explains the popularity. BMW is one of the few brands that continues to focus on station wagons in its latest generation models, since it has already confirmed that its future 3 Series, the new class, will indeed also come in a station wagon version, including the fully electric versions. That's it. We've covered all the news for this Friday. I'll see you again tomorrow for the first video of the weekend. In the meantime, I hope you found this one interesting. If that's the case, as usual, I'm counting on you to show it by leaving a like, subscribing for upcoming videos, or possibly supporting the channel by clicking the join button below this one. And a last-minute announcement. Normally, next week or the week after, I'll be live on YouTube to do, just like I did 3 months ago, a little live session where we'll talk about cars, just to do a quick review of this first half of 2025. Let me know in the comments which date and day work best for you to see this live, so I can choose what's best for everyone. That's it. See you soon in a new video. Bye.